We are going to talk about Piaget and his stages of cognitive development. So we're going to jump right in with this little phrase from Piaget. If we examine the intellectual development of the individual or of the whole of humanity, we shall find that the human spirit goes through a certain number of stages, each different from the other. So Piaget definitely believes in stages, and we'll dig into what he defines as the various stages of development. A stage theory means that children progress in steps. Each stage is identified with what the child cannot do. So this is very special to Piaget. Most people talk about what a child can do. Piaget is going to talk about what a child cannot do. And that's how he's going to devise his various stages. So keep that in mind as we go forward. Our primary concepts, before we get into the stages, we need to talk about schemas. Schemas are a mental structure which organizes and integrates information regarding an object, event, or situation. So for instance, if I said car, you have a schema about a car, or you have an idea about what a car is. So with this object, or we can look at events or situations, but it's how you organize your thoughts surrounding this concept. So for car, you might imagine, I don't know, a Gran Torino. How come? That's fun. Or maybe a little bug, a little VW bug, okay? Whatever it is, that is how you are organizing and integrating your information about this particular object. Or we could look at event or situation. That's going to be different from assimilation. Assimilation is interpreting new experiences using our existent schemas. So again, schemas are ideas about something. So we're going to take a new experience and use our existing schemas to make sense of this new experience. So for example, schema for a dog includes 4 legs, it's large, and it's black and white. Little Johnny now sees a cow for the first time, and he assimilates by calling the cow a dog, because he knows dog, 4 legs, large, black and white, and now when he sees a cow, 4 legs, large, black and white, he calls the cow a dog. Okay, so this is a new situation using what he knows in order to make sense of this new situation. Accommodation is the third piece to this. Accommodation is adjusting a schema to take into account a new experience. So little Johnny is told that the cow is not a dog, and he accommodates by limiting the dog schema and extending the dog schema to form a large animal schema, or creates a new cow schema. So what this means is Mom and Dad come along and they say, no, Johnny, that's not a dog. That's a cow. That's a cow. Cows go moo, right? We always do that with kids. I don't know why. We always do farm animal noises. So little Johnny now knows that dog is 4 legs, large, black and white, and it goes bark, bark. And over here we have this other animal. It looks similar, but it's a little bit larger and it goes moo. So little Johnny is going to create a new cow schema around this new idea. And creating that new schema is considered accommodation. Okay, a lot of students get assimilation and accommodation mixed up. Make sure you know the difference between those two. Assimilation is using what you know to a new scenario. Accommodation is then changing, or let me rephrase that. Accommodation is then taking this new information and doing something with it to extend what you already know. Okay? Schema, cat, black, white, fuzzy. Assimilation, something that looks like a cat, it's fuzzy, it's black and white. Little Johnny says, kitty. Accommodation comes along, and here is where little Johnny finds out that this is not a kitty. Instead, this is a skunk, and when you see skunk, you need to run away. Okay, so you can read through that. Put me on pause if you need to. Read through those different terminologies there, and I'm going to keep going, but feel free to pause me. Piaget's 4 stages of cognitive oh my goodness, cognitive development. We're going to start with stage 1, sensory motor stage. Make sure you know for the exam both the title of the stage and the age range. So sensory motor stage is from birth to 2. This is when children learn through their senses and motor movements, and they coordinate the 2. Okay, so if you think about a little one between birth and 2, what do they love to do? They love to shove things into their mouth. They're mouthing everything because that's where they get most of their sensation from, is in that oral fixation. So children learn through their senses, a lot of times through their mouth. They want to touch everything. They want to feel everything. They want to grab everything. Once they can walk, they start walking through everything. Okay, so they use their senses and their motor movements, and they start coordinating the 2 in order to figure out the world around them. Okay, so sensory, conveniently, they're using their senses, and motor movements, in order to learn. Okay, object permanence is a term that you want to connect to sensory motor stage. Children do not perceive that an object continues to exist when removed from sight. Okay, so peekaboo is so fascinating for children, especially between birth and 2. Probably they get it by 2, but closer to the birth and into the first year, peekaboo is so fascinating to them because mommy exists, mommy doesn't exist. Mommy exists, mommy doesn't exist. And it's fascinating to them. We'll talk about this a little bit more when we recap in class. But children do not perceive that objects continue to exist when it is removed from their sight. Remember, Piaget looks at what children cannot do. And in the sensory motor stage, children cannot understand object permanence. It's something they will develop throughout sensory motor stage, and they will have it by the second stage. Second stage, pre-operational. This is between ages 2 to 6. It's kind of nicknamed before mental abilities, and we'll talk about that in class, whether you think it is actually before mental abilities. Acquire language. During 2 to 6 years old, kids explode with their language. They learn to manipulate symbols representing the environment. So they learn colors, they learn shapes, they learn adjectives, things to describe various things in their world. So they manipulate symbols representing the environment. Conservation, this is a fascinating thing with kiddos. The pre-operational child cannot realize, again, Piaget focuses on what kids cannot do. So the pre-operational child cannot realize that a quantity remains the same despite changes in its shape. Okay, so you see at the bottom there's a picture of 2 beakers, and they're lining them up and they're making sure that they're the same size, the same level of liquid. What she does is she flips it over and it changes the shape of the liquid. But does it change the volume? It doesn't. It's the same volume, but it looks different. And so little Johnny here is pointing at the beaker on the left, saying that that one has more water because it looks taller. They don't get conservation at this pre-operational stage. Okay, we'll dig into that some more as well. Oh, hold on. I'm going to pause you for a second. You can't see that yet. Okay, I'll show you that last screen that I just flipped past. I'll show you that in class. So come to class and I'll show you the M&Ms, and I'll make you feel like a pre-operational child for a moment. Okay, pre-operational stage continued. Egocentric or egocentrism. The pre-operational child cannot perceive things from another's point of view. So for instance, we can ask little Johnny, do you have a brother? And Johnny says yes. And we say, does your brother have a brother? And Johnny says, nope, because he can't take the perspective of his brother to understand that his brother does have a brother, and it's him. Okay? The development of the ability to take another's perspective allows for empathy. And this is a big thing for kiddos this age, is trying to teach them empathy. When you hit little Sally, that hurts, and she doesn't like it. Don't do that. So empathy is a big thing we're trying to teach them, but it's hard because they do not always understand another person's point of view. Theory of mind. This one's fascinating to me. A child's mental idea of how his or her and others' mental activities work. I'm going to show you this video about Mean Monkey, which is great. This kid is so funny. Let me go back then. And it's going to show you about theory of mind. And theory of mind is going to show us how at the beginning of this preoperational stage, children believe that other people understand and know their thoughts. So they don't understand that their thoughts are private and to themselves. As they get to the end of preoperational stage, they will finally understand that their thoughts are their own and nobody knows their thoughts but them. Okay, so theory of mind, a child's mental idea of how his or her and other mental activities work. So to recap, theory of mind, they do not have theory of mind to start the preoperational stage. They will start working through it, and once they accomplish the theory of mind, they will be into stage 3. Okay, so stay tuned for Mean Monkey. I love Mean Monkey. Number 3, concrete operational stages between ages 6 to 12 years old. Children show reasoning, but only applied to what they can directly experience. So they would get that whole beaker thing that we just did with the little kiddos and flipped it over because they could flip it and reverse it back and forth in order to understand that things can go back to the way that they started initially. Okay, so reversibility is something that helps them to understand some of this conservation because they realize that things can be reversed. They can form hierarchical classifications, but they cannot use them mentally. So they know the difference between carnations and flowers, but they have a hard time comparing carnations. Now let me rephrase that. They can compare carnations and daisies because they're both types of flowers, but they have a hard time comparing carnations to flowers because they're 2 different levels of the hierarchy. And we'll go through that in class. Stay tuned for that one if that one doesn't quite make sense. And we'll use this as an example. But for now, we're going to move on to formal operations, which is step 4. Formal operations is 12 and older. It now includes the ability to think abstractly. We're no longer confined to thinking about what they have directly experienced. They can now think abstractly and outside the box of things that they've touched and seen and heard. They're able to solve hypothetical problems, use propositional reasoning, so if this, then this, and inductive and deductive reasoning. This is when mystery books become really cool to kiddos, 12 and older, where they can figure out the mystery before the detective does. They can project themselves into the future and they can start planning. So we can give little Johnny a project and he can be able to figure out how long this project is going to take. We can give it to him 2 weeks in advance and we can expect him to have it completed by the due date because he should be able to plan. Now, 12-year-olds are not always responsible enough to follow through, but they have the ability to do it. Okay, I think we're going to stop there. We're going to stop there for now. Come to class. We will dig into these with a few different activities so that you can see these come alive a little bit. And then we're going to move on in development into some other fascinating areas. So Piaget in a nutshell. I'll see you in class.